Welcome to the Northwest Board of Education virtual school board meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Bless you.
Thank you.
Hey, Chris, can you take roll call, please?
Mr. Gilbert,
Here.
Mr. Detzel,
Here.
Mr. Teetsort,
Here.
Mrs. Detzel,
Here.
Mr. Yoshimura.
Here.
Thank you, Chris. Matt, are there any legislative updates that you have for us?
Okay. The only thing I really have to report is both the Ohio House of Representatives and Ohio Senate have passed legislation providing K through 12 schools and others immunity from civil liability due to the exposure of COVID. Each bill must still pass the other chamber before sending to the line, though. Senate Bill 308 is currently pending in the Ohio House, which has recessed for the summer. And then House Bill 606 is pending in the Senate and is receiving committee hearings due to that chamber still holding session days. So that's all I have.
Great. Thanks, Matt. Todd, do you have anything to add to that you need to chime in?
That's about it. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Jim, you have any Butler Tech updates?
Yeah, the only thing is we're just kind of in a holding pattern waiting to see what the governor suggests. Just like here at Northwest, what we're doing. So not really anything, new going on until we hear what the governor says.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 10.1, report from any employee organizations.
I did not receive any, Mr. Gilbert.
Great, thank you. And how about community comments?
I did not receive any via email either.
Okay, great. And that moves us to 11.1, adoption of the superintendent consent items.
Adoption of the superintendent consent items. These are action items. There are some personnel items, resignations, retirements, new hires, vendor contracts. If you look on the vendor contracts, you will notice that they are all auxiliary and paid for out of federal non-public grant monies, and they were all budgeted for, so nothing that we were not aware of. So the superintendent recommends the Board of Education approve the adoption of the superintendent consent items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments about any of the consent agenda items?
I just have one question for Todd on the personnel items. Are all of these retirements and resignations going to be filled?
It depends on what they were for. If some have retired in lieu of reductions that were made, and it will all be based on enrollment and what is needed. But if they are designated to be filled based on enrollment and class size and students in each school, then they will be. It just depends on what our numbers show.
Okay. Thank you.
Todd, with these personnel changes, are there, with the possibility that there's going to be a % of our education is going to be virtual online, are there any of our educators that have stepped up and said, hey, that's kind of my niche, I'd really like to enjoy doing that, or somebody taking the lead on that?
We have surveyed our staff to see what their comfort level is with returning. Some we cannot talk about because of FERPA and stuff like that, that may not be allowed to return. Others have said if there is a large amount, which right now in our latest survey, 17% said they were interested in staying remote learning. 25% said they were undecided. So what 17% equals to is about 1,500 students. So this is something we would work closely with our union as we discuss these items. And this is something we'll have to identify once we get the final recommendations for reopening. A lot of that can't hit the ground and we can't start running until we find out what we can and cannot do. We again are going for a full return, but we are offering remote learning as we have advertised through email and on our website. So we will see what enrollment is at each building, determine what we have at each grade level or each subject area as you go to upper level, and then we will assign them accordingly.
Great. Thank you.
And we'll need to be flexible with that, because if kids
Sure.
are going to do remote learning, they work during the day or other things, so we have to be able to meet their needs.
Any other questions? All right, we'll go for the vote. Vote passes 5-0. Next agenda item is the adoption of the fiscal consent items. Ms. Wells?
Good evening. For the fiscal consent items, it's first starting with the dispensing of and reading the regular meeting minutes from May 26th, as well as the special meetings from June 15th and June 22nd. Additionally is the financial reports for the month of May. So for the month of May, our all funds balance was a little over 51 million, with our general fund unreserved balance of 31 million. Our revenues for year to date were at 91 million, or 97% of what we projected, and our expenditures are at 87 million, or at 90% of what we projected for the year. Our average return on investments are at 1.19%, and this is down, of course, due to the economy, from 2.24% at the beginning of our fiscal year. Our list of monthly bills for the month of May were our routine monthly bills, as well as the portrait of a graduate expenditure, summer cleaning supplies, roof repairs, technology supplies, construction payments, our liability, property, and fleet insurance premiums, some legal services, our Waycross payment, and auxiliary payments. We also had then and now certifications. We had 3 invoices that were over the $3,000. 2 were for our non-publics, and 1 was for the technology department. An invoice from the beginning of the year happened to get missed. We also need to accept, approve, and appropriate a grant for next fiscal year. It's our Title III immigrant grant for $4.3 thousand. So with that, I'd like to ask the board to the treasurer recommends the Board of Education approve the adoption of the fiscal consent items as listed.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Does anyone have any questions at all? Ramey? Nope. All right, we'll call for vote. Vote passes 5-0. Next is the advance from general fund.
Yes, so at year end, we need to advance monies from the general fund to cover any negative fund balance. So as we're closing the year, we do have a need to advance the general fund to cover negative grants of $10,811. So with that, I recommend that the Board of Education approve the advance. And once we roll into July, the advance will be paid back.
Great.
It's just a year-end closing procedure.
Sure.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Are there any questions at all? Call for the vote. Vote passes 5-0. Next item is approval of the permanent appropriations resolution.
So as part of our year-end closing, we need to adopt and pass the permanent appropriations for the year. Our appropriations for our final appropriations for fiscal year 20 are at $156 million. This is down 2.2 million from March, as we've been reducing budgets that haven't been spent for the year throughout the all district funds. So with that, I ask the board to approve the fiscal year 20 permanent final appropriations at 156 million.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. Does anybody have any questions for Amy about the appropriations? Call for the vote. And that vote passes 5-0 as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Next is agenda item 15.1, harassment, intimidation, bullying for the 2019-2020 summary.
Yes, student services each year is required to put a final summary of the bullying 1920s information. The attachment shows information here, of what occurred at each school. These numbers are obviously not as accurate as they would be with us being on remote learning toward the end of the school year. We did still check and reach out. Parents and students could still report if they were receiving online harassment or any type of that type of activity. Just as a reminder, a student, parent, and guardian may file a complaint of harassment, intimidation, or bullying pursuant to board policy JFCF. We have a summary of the reincidents. We report the complaints received, whether each complaint was found to be an actual case of HIB. We do not let the school investigate it. We have an independent investigator from central office do the investigation, therefore to make sure they are looking at both sides of the complaint. So this is something we are required to do at the end of each school year, and a midterm report that we do.
Why is the White Oak Middle School so high in these allegations?
It could be that parents are turning more things in. At the other school, it does require the form to be filled out and handed in. Some choose to hand it in, and some do not. And just because there's a high number of first semester allegations, a lot of it could be about a single student or a couple of students that have caused some issues because they all handed them in at once.
Okay.
Todd, there's also, if I remember correctly, talking to Dustin, that there's a criteria that has to be met that's mandated by the state, and if even just one of them are not met in the criteria, it doesn't fall under the reporting structure. So how much do we have a way of monitoring how much doesn't fit into that mold and we're actually experiencing that?
I'm not sure if we have the exact amount. I know that every complaint is listened to, and that an investigation is done to determine if it was harassment or if it was intimidation or it was bullying. At that point, the summary of the results are mailed back to the parent, not just the schools, so they know exactly what the findings are. So sometimes there are findings. If you look at the number of cases verified, there were, for example, 10 might have been alleged, only 3 were verified. If you look at the 21 at White Oak Middle School, 12 were verified. If you look going on down, 2 at Montford Heights, 1 was verified. If you look at second semester, 6 were alleged and 4 were verified. Sometimes it's easier to find because it'll be through social media or through written notes or things that are given, but it all depends on each case is individual.
Okay. It'll be interesting when school comes back with all this kids being off, how that's all going to play out with their emotional health being sequestered for all this time.
That is going to be a big piece of returning the social and emotional well-being of all our students, making sure we're checking with them on a regular basis, making sure we're giving that appropriate amount of time on a daily basis to make sure our kids are in a good place.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments? No. Next, we move into 16.1, which is Todd, your update.
Yes. The first thing I would like to remind everyone is our next Board of Education meeting is July 10th at 7:30 in the morning. We are not trying to hide anything. We are not trying to cover up anything. July 10th is by law when the last day that you can resign from a school district to take a job with another position. So if somebody would come to us on July 11th or 12th or 13th and want to resign, we would not have to by law. We would look at the circumstances to see. So we like to get our approvals in so they can resign from other districts. And then if they need our resignations completed so they can accept contracts to other districts. So there is a very short meeting there. And that is the purpose of the HR meeting and why is it is at 7:30 a.m. on July 10th. In terms of an update on where we are from the governor, we continue to get information that tells us the reopening guidelines are coming out. They were supposed to come out last Tuesday. They were then bumped to Thursday. They were then bumped till tomorrow, and they have now been bumped to Thursday. We are all complaining loudly as superintendents and treasurers. We need the guidelines because we need to plan for school, and it needs to be a priority. Some of the first times it was canceled to move back because there wasn't enough input given from school administrators about what we're doing. But I think he's listening now, and that's what's delayed the last three. As I have said before, and will continue to say, we are looking at a full return. The equity piece is huge for us. We need all kids to be in school. Remote learning will occur if a parent chooses for it to occur. We will offer that as an alternative and be glad to offer that as an alternative. I just keep reminding everyone that everybody has a different view or opinion on this. We don't know what the health conditions are in everybody's household. So a kid who might be someone who could carry it back and forth, they may want to stay remote for that kid, not because of what they're worried of getting at school, because of what they could bring home for a parent who might have a medical condition or grandparents. So we have to be very open to what people want to do. We don't want at all to be critical of anybody in their decision. And the other important piece is we've got to worry about the safety and concern of our staff. Staff cannot be overlooked. We are the largest employee in our district. I believe we're at 1,200, and I don't think anybody besides Rumpke is close to us, but with 1,200 employees, and they might be larger than us, but we are one of the largest employees in our district. We take employee safety very serious, and we've got to make sure when the reopening guidelines come out that we can provide a safe environment for our employees return to school, and most importantly, our kids return to school. So we will come back full force, but if a parent would like to have remote learning occur, we will have forms for them to fill out. They can sign up for remote learning and stay on remote learning. The important piece to remember there is that we don't know the exact number like Mark asked earlier. So our initial survey had some great results. 17% wanted remote learning, but 50 or 25% was not sure what they wanted to do. So if 17% is about 1,500 students, 25% adds more to that. So we'll need to have staff in appropriate places. When we return to school, again, I want to reiterate that our job will be to keep school open. If staff get sick, we don't know what the guidelines are for that. If they have one symptom of COVID, what are the reopening guidelines going to say? Is it going to be 7 days at home, 10 days at home, 14 days, 3 days with no fever? We're just waiting to get our guidance. We will work very closely and collaboratively with the Hamilton County Health Department and make sure we've got all our bases covered there, because this is just something that we have to take very serious and have to keep monitoring. But if people want to know why are we pushing for a full return to school, it's pretty simple. One, we want our kids to school. We want them all to have an equal chance to get an equal education. We can't have an equity gap where only 2 kids or 1 kid per seat and 24 on a bus can come. We need to bus all our kids to school. So who gets left out if that's the case? We need our kids back in front of our teachers who are the experts, who are professionals, who are great at what they do. And if we're doing remote, we have issues where we have to address, are they doing what they need to do? And we did find out last spring that not everybody was doing what they needed to do. So I fully believe that we'll start the school year full go, but everything will be based on the cases in Hamilton County, the cases in our school district, and the cases in our individual schools will all have an effect on what we do. If we have to go remote learning, we will be ready. And we will be even better at it because we've had the summer to plan. We've had our experiences from the spring to learn from. So we will be very good at what we're trying to do there. The other thing I wanted to address is last Monday was a lot of tough decisions. And we recognize that the lives of our staffs, our families, and our students were impacted with the recent reductions. Our staff is extremely important to us, but I wanted everybody to know, in an effort to keep our staff intact, we were able to utilize our current open positions to place 39 of the 45 employees that had their positions eliminated in various positions. In fact, 21 of the 45 were able to stay in their current school or department, not necessarily the same job. So while most accepted another position in the district, there were a few staff members that opted out of taking on a new role or were unable to be offered a comparable position. So it wasn't absolute 100%, but we care about our folks. We worked as hard as we could to get them placed. May not have been the same position, but we were very proud of that fact. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And that's basically all I have, unless you have questions for me.
Any questions, guys and gals?
For our next meeting, are we looking at a virtual or in person?
We were looking at a virtual meeting.
Okay.
Todd, thank your team for all the work they did trying to place everybody. I honestly can't comprehend how much work that would be. I'm sure there's a lot juggling it. In this day and age where there's an immense amount of unemployment, the fact that we got to keep them on and keep checks coming is it's certainly better than what it could have been.
I agree, and I will definitely forward that to them. A lot of work came from Carol and the HR department and our administrative team here. Our building principals had a lot to help us out there also, so we appreciate everything.
Great. Any other questions? All right. Board comments. Joe?
Well, I just hope that Mr. DeWine or Governor DeWine makes up his mind this week so we can move on and prepare. That's it.
Pam?
Just hope everybody's getting to enjoy their summer, whether they're getting to go away somewhere or stay here close to home. And like Joe, I hope the governor, sends us in a direction so we can go ahead and quit living in limbo and our staff knows, what they'll be doing in the fall.
Thank you.
Jim?
No comments.
Okay. Matt?
Pretty much like the others have said. I know that, it's the staff, and I'm certain the parents, including myself, want to know what's going to happen with the school reopening in the fall. So hopefully DeWine has something to report on Thursday. And hope everyone out there is being safe this summer. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. I guess the only thing I would say is, we've got a few weeks left before all this starts charging. I'm kind of with Pam, like, take some downtime, relax, turn the TV off, recharge, and get ready for the tilt-a-wheel that will probably get sat on here in the next couple weeks. And as Matt said, stay safe, practice your social distancing and wash your hands more than you ever could imagine. And that's it for me. We'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Vote passes 5-0. Thank you for joining us on the Board of Education meeting. We will be back on July for our early morning end of the year wrap up Board of Education meeting. And stay safe. Thank you.